Hey everyone, please support what I do to help keep Greyhawk alive by subscribing to the channel. Also, please consider becoming a channel member to get early access to videos, exclusive live chats, quarterly adventure modules, and more. Thanks, and enjoy the show. So, a couple of weeks ago, one of the commenters on one of my videos asked if I could do sort of an overview for beginners of what Greyhawk is all about. So I thought that's what I'd do today on Greyhawk Grognard. So, obviously, Greyhawk is my favorite campaign setting for D&D, and I actually take the setting beyond just D&D. I've played war games in it, and a whole bunch, I've written fiction for it. It's more than just a D&D setting, the way I look at it. And I thought I'd try to give a quick overview, hitting all the highlights as to why Greyhawk is unique and why you might, as a player, want to visit the Greyhawk and play, play D&D or other games inside of it. Geographically, there are three main regions of the setting. The geography, the world of Greyhawk is chiefly set in what's called the Flanaess. It's analogous to Europe. It's on one end of a large continent called Oerk. Again, analogous to Eurasia, except it's kind of flipped around east to west. There are three regions in the Flanaess. There's the central region, which is around the city of Greyhawk and a body of water called the Near Dive. It's a freshwater lake. There's a lot of traffic on it and everything, but it's basically the region surrounding that within a few hundred miles. And you have all kinds of different kinds of terrain within that region, and a lot of the most famous locations in the world of Greyhawk are in that central region. That is where Gary Gygax's original campaign was focused. So that's where you have Castle Greyhawk, you have the Temple of Elemental Evil, that's where the slave lords were, so you have a lot of stuff going on in that central region because it was the original focus. Now, there's also, off to the west, there's something called the Sheldamar Valley. And that is a collection of a bunch of kingdoms and other states and everything, dominated by a kingdom called Kaoland. Kaoland it's a good aligned nation, and all of the states along the western border are threatened by giants mostly. And this is where we have the giants modules, the Hill of the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, the Glacial, the Glacier of the Frost Giant Jarl, and the Hall of the Fire Giant King. And then that's where you also get the Underworld and the Drow and Erelhai Kinlu and the Quotoas and all those things. So all that kind of arises in that western section of the Flanaess. And then you have off to the east, you have the Great Kingdom, which is an enormous empire which is evil and decadent and is embroiled in wars with its neighbors. And it used to rule pretty much the entire continent. And over the years, as it became more and more decadent and evil, parts of it broke away. So now it's kind of retrenched in this old, decadent is really, I keep saying the word, but it's the perfect word. And it's evil. It's beset by humanoids in the north and barbarian raiders in the north. It's at war with its neighbors to the south who broke away, and it's at war with its neighbors to the west who broke away. So there's a lot of conflict and stuff going on there. So that's the basics of the geography. There's obviously more stuff. There's stuff up to the north where you have an evil demigod named Ayuz who's threatening all kinds of things. And depending on when you are setting your campaign, he's either a looming threat or he's made huge conquests and is a dire threat. Which brings us to the timeline. The world of Greyhawk was originally set in what's known as the Common Year 576. This is the original where the Gold Box was published, and it shows the Flanaess as a place of balance. There is rising evil, but evil is but there's also rising good to combat it. So you get a vision of the Flyness very much as being in a state of tension, because there are evil nations like the Great Kingdom, and there's good nations like Kaeland or Nyrond or Furiondi. There's evil rising up in the north with Ayus, and there's bandits, and there's nomads and things like that, but there's also good forces around. So you have all these things just kind of stirring and lurking about if you choose to set your game in 576. Now, after that, we have another section of the setting that was detailed. This is the common year 585. This is after what are known as the Greyhawk Wars. The Greyhawk Wars was a big event, and they did a box game of it, and then they came out with another box set called From the Ashes, which describes the Flyness in after the wars. Entire nations are gone. The Great Kingdom that we talked about has now broken up into a number of different states, and a lot of it's in a state of anarchy. A couple of major kingdoms are trying to come out of the rubble. The central core is ruled by the Overking, who is an undead, and it's just a hellscape. The Cambian god Ayus, who used to rule over a small little patch of kingdom up in the north, has now conquered almost the entire north and is a enormously looming threat to the nations to the south. Certain nations have completely disappeared and been conquered. The giants have taken over entire swaths of territory down in the southwest. So the 585 setting is very much good is being beset, right? Evil is ascendant, and good is on the ropes, and it's up to the PCs to help good overcome evil and save the world, as it were. So you have these different themes happening depending on when you set your game. Now, there's another setting, another time frame, which is the common year 591, which shows things are a little bit better for the forces of good. They're getting their breath back. They're beating back evil here and there. The Scarlet Brotherhood, which is a mysterious, which started off, I should say, as a mysterious group of monks, has tried to take over bits of territory for themselves. They've assassinated leaders, they've taken over countries, and they're being beaten back a little bit here and there. The Great Kingdom is kind of settling down a little bit. The forces of good are rallying themselves and are rebuilding. Ayus is still an enormous threat, but he's not quite as energetically projecting his power as it used to be. So, and even the giants have been pushed back. So 591, we're seeing kind of a retrenchment and a coming back to the state of balance that we had, but things are still all shook up throughout the setting. So you have those three major time frames in which to set your game, and I like the idea that you have those choices. It's still the same campaign, but you've seen the course of history flow, and that gives it kind of a great feeling of history. Now, in terms of themes, balance is an enormously important theme for the Greyhawk campaign. Back in that first era, 576, we saw that things were kind of in a state of balance and tension. We learned that there are actually forces and individuals who are actively promoting balance, neutrality. Druids and a group called the Hierophants, and another group called the Rosy Cross, and the Circle of Eight, which is a group of neutral adventurers. They're actively pushing for neutrality. They're actively preventing either good or evil from triumphing. So when good is ascendant, they kind of undermine it so that it doesn't squash everything. And then when evil is ascendant, they undermine that so that it doesn't just lay over everything oppressively. So they're actively trying to keep the wheel spinning so that no one force ever comes in power. And I love that idea. Another thing another theme that we see in the Greyhawk setting is that it is a post-apocalyptic setting in a lot of ways. There is technology. Not only is there the famous technology in the expedition to the Barrier Peaks where a spaceship has crashed and there's like androids and lasers and things, but we also know that there was something called the Twin Cataclysms more than 1,000 years in the past, which destroyed two large empires, and there were migrations that came out of it. But we get hints that there was a higher level of technology technology back then, because we have devices like the Machine of Lum the Mad or the Mighty Servant of Leuk O, which are technological in nature, and they're old and they're broken down, but they still work a little bit, and you have that feeling that there was something more that in the past before that great cataclysm happened. And finally, the other theme that we have is the larger scale. I've already talked about the fact that there are kingdoms coming and going, and there's great wars, and early on, Gary Gygax, obviously the creator of the setting, had written a bunch of articles in the 80s in Dragon Magazine depicting battles and where the armies were moving, and how many troops this kingdom had, and so forth. So very much it was intended to be a larger scale of a campaign. Most campaigns are pretty much just, there's individual adventurers. There's talk, oh yes, this kingdom has an army, that kingdom has an army, but you don't really see them in action all that much. Dragonlance is an exception, obviously, because that was central to its story. But as a rule, you don't see the impact of these wars and armies like you do in the world of Greyhawk. And not only do we see it in the kingdoms and realms and stuff, but the player characters, once they get to high enough level, this is where they actually carve their own realms out of the wilderness, out of the borderlands, and they create their own castles, and they recruit soldiers and things. So the all the stuff that was described in first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was actually going on here in the Greyhawk campaign. Both Gary and his players had their characters actually create armies and fortresses and stuff. So you get this idea that the larger scale was always part of this. And finally, another reason that Greyhawk stands out is that it's home to some of the most iconic places and people and in Dungeons and Dragons. It's where Castle Greyhawk was. It was one of the first mega dungeon campaign castles. It's where the Temple of Elemental Evil was. It's where the giant modules were. It's where the slave lords were. It's where we have characters like Vecna and Acererak, and Tensor and Mordenkainen, and people whose characters whose names have been in the game since the very, very earliest days. They're from Greyhawk. They define what Greyhawk is. So you have this enormous history, not only within the game, but also within the setting, but also within the game. That kind of Greyhawk is in Dungeons and Dragons blood. So anyway, that's my quick overview of the setting and why I think it deserves a chance at your table. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have I done a good job explaining what it's all about? Hope you enjoyed this one, and I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.